The rain fell in heavy sheets, transforming the bustling streets of New York into a blurry canvas of reflections and muted colors. Rachel Carter gripped the steering wheel of her small car, her heart racing with excitement and anxiety. The upcoming art exhibition loomed in her mind, a culmination of years of hard work and sleepless nights. She felt a swirl of emotions: anticipation, fear, and a flicker of doubt. "What if they don't like it?" she muttered under her breath, her voice barely audible over the rhythmic drumming of the rain against the windshield. As she turned onto a slick road, the tires lost traction momentarily, sending a jolt of panic through her. "Come on, focus," she urged herself, trying to shake off the growing unease. The streets were nearly deserted, a stark contrast to the usual hustle and bustle, and the shadows cast by the streetlights seemed to stretch ominously. Just then, a flash of headlights appeared in her peripheral vision. "Oh no!" she gasped, her instincts kicking in as she swerved sharply to avoid the oncoming vehicle. But the road was unforgiving. Her car skidded, the back end spinning out of control. In that fleeting moment, time warped. Rachel felt the air rush past her, the world blurring into a whirl of sound and motion, and then, a deafening crash. Darkness enveloped her, a thick, suffocating blanket that stole away the chaos of the storm outside. When consciousness returned, Rachel found herself in a dimly lit room. Confusion clouded her thoughts as she struggled to make sense of her surroundings. The muted sound of sobs pulled her attention, and she squinted into the shadows, recognizing the familiar figure of her husband, Ethan, as he sat hunched over. "Rachel, please come back to me," he whispered, his voice breaking. Her heart ached at the sound of his pain, but she felt an unsettling presence beside him. Turning her head slightly, she saw Laura, her childhood friend, with a look of deep sorrow etched on her face as she comforted Ethan. Rachel's chest tightened as realization dawned. She was not merely a spectator. She was trapped in a reality she couldn't comprehend. "What's happening?" she thought, her mind racing as she fought against the overwhelming sense of despair that filled the room. The air was thick with grief and unanswered questions, and Rachel felt a profound sense of loss, not just for herself but for the love she had shared with Ethan, now tainted by the unspoken connection between him and Laura. Desperation clawed at her, urging her to reach out, to scream, to tell them she was there, but no sound escaped her lips. All she could do was watch as the life she knew crumbled around her, leaving her suspended in an agonizing limbo. Rachel floated in a surreal haze, the weight of her own absence pressing down on her as she watched Ethan stand at the podium. The dim light from the flickering candles cast shadows that danced across his face, accentuating the anguish etched in his features. He was speaking, his voice trembling, yet it was laced with a bittersweet tenderness. "Rachel and I shared so many beautiful moments," he began, glancing down at a framed photo of them from their wedding day. "I remember the day we adopted Luna. She was so small, so scared." His gaze flickered to Laura, who stood off to the side, her expression a mix of profound sorrow and unspoken understanding. Rachel's heart ached as she noticed how Ethan's eyes lingered on Laura for just a moment too long, as if a silent conversation passed between them. Rachel wanted to scream, to shake him from this nightmare, but instead, she felt like a ghost, trapped in her own limbo. She strained to reach out, to call his name, but her voice was lost in the void. "Ethan, please," she thought desperately. "I'm still here." As the ceremony continued, Rachel's frustration grew. She could see the tears streaming down Ethan's face as he recounted their happiest memories. Dancing in their living room, lazy Sunday mornings, the thrill of her first gallery opening. Each recollection was a dagger to her heart. Why couldn't he feel her presence? Why was Laura the one he turned to for comfort? "Rachel loved that painting of the sunset," Ethan said, his voice breaking. It was her way of capturing the beauty of life, even in its darkest moments. Rachel closed her eyes, memories flooding her mind. Her easel, the vibrant colors, the sense of freedom she found in her art. But alongside those memories were shadows of doubt and betrayal. She felt the weight of an unspoken truth hovering in the air, a tension that grew thicker as the eulogy approached. Amidst the somber atmosphere, Rachel caught fragments of a hushed conversation between Ethan and Laura. "I should have told her the truth," Laura whispered, her voice barely above a murmur. "I never meant for it to happen, Ethan. You know I loved her." Rachel froze, her heart pounding in disbelief. "The truth? What truth?" She strained to catch every word. her mind racing with implications. The betrayal she had never noticed now loomed large, threatening to shatter the fragile memories of their love. Ethan, what did she mean? Rachel's thoughts spiraled, the weight of their shared past crashing down on her. The room seemed to close in, the mourners fading into a blur as the reality of her situation became unbearably clear. The man she loved was entangled in a web of emotion she had never expected, and her heart, though still tethered to him, felt like it was splintering further with every passing second. In the ethereal haze of her own funeral, Rachel Carter floated between moments of clarity and confusion, her heart heavy with unfulfilled desires. As she observed Ethan, his face etched with sorrow, she felt an insatiable urge to understand the essence of their love, to reclaim the memories that defined them. "I should have been there for you," Ethan whispered, his voice trembling as he clutched the eulogy paper. "We promised each other we'd always be honest." Rachel wished she could reach out, to comfort him, to tell him that she was still here, even if invisible. But the weight of her body, the absence of it, held her captive in a space where words were mere echoes. Laura stood beside him, her hand resting gently on Ethan's shoulder, a gesture that sparked a flicker of jealousy within Rachel. She had always known Laura was more than a friend, but this moment felt like a betrayal. "You were always too focused on your art, Ethan," Laura said softly, her voice laced with regret. "You didn't see how much she needed you." Rachel recalled the early days of her career, the excitement of her first gallery opening, the way Ethan had looked at her with pride as she unveiled her paintings. "I believed in you," he had said that night, his eyes shining. But as memories of their laughter faded into the shadows of their struggles, Rachel felt the pang of neglect. The late nights spent alone while Ethan worked, the silences that stretched between them like unspoken words, all flooded her mind. Suddenly, Laura's voice pierced through her reverie. "There was a time when he almost left, Rachel," Laura confessed, a tremor in her voice. "I thought I could help him find his way back to happiness." Rachel's heart sank. The fragility of her marriage, once a solid foundation, now seemed precarious. "Why didn't you tell me?" she wanted to scream, to confront both of them, but her voice was swallowed by the void. Instead, she hovered silently, grappling with the realization that love was not just about the beautiful moments but also about the cracks and imperfections that threatened to shatter it. In that moment, Rachel understood that she needed to face these truths, to confront the complexities of her life and their love, if she ever hoped to find peace. As Rachel floated in the ethereal space of her own funeral, a newfound determination stirred within her. The weight of her emotions, buried under layers of grief and betrayal, began to surface. With a flicker of inspiration, she envisioned a canvas, a way to communicate her essence and feelings to those she loved. She concentrated, channeling her artistic spirit, and imagined the brush gliding across the surface, colors merging to form a poignant representation of her turmoil. In her mind's eye, she could see the painting taking shape, a swirling tempest of blues and grays, interspersed with vibrant strokes of warmth representing her happiest memories with Ethan. Each color held a story, a moment that defined their love and the fractures that had emerged over time. "If only I could make them see," she whispered to the void, wishing desperately to reach Ethan. As the imagery solidified, flashes of her past erupted like fireworks. She recalled their first date in a quaint gallery, the way Ethan had looked at her, eyes sparkling with admiration. "You have a gift, Rachel," he had said, his voice steady, as he traced his finger over her latest work. But those memories were soon tainted with shadows, arguments that had spiraled out of control, moments of silence that had grown too heavy to bear, and the undeniable presence of Laura hovering in the periphery of their lives. Meanwhile, Ethan sat at the edge of the gathering, his heart heavy with guilt. The weight of his sorrow felt palpable, as if it were a physical entity pressing down on him. He glanced at Laura, whose face reflected both anguish and understanding, and he felt a surge of conflicting emotions. "What am I doing?" he muttered to himself, his voice barely above a whisper. "I should have fought harder for her." Rachel sensed his turmoil, the invisible thread of connection between them pulsating with intensity. "Ethan, I'm here," she longed to cry out, but her voice remained locked within the confines of her spirit. She was a mere observer to his grief, yet she felt every pang of his regret reverberating through her. "Why didn't I appreciate her more?" Ethan's voice cracked, his hands trembling as he gripped the edge of his seat. "I took her for granted. I thought there would always be time." Laura reached out, placing a gentle hand on his shoulder, but Rachel could see the conflict in Ethan's eyes. His heart was torn between the memories of his late wife and the comfort Laura provided. In that moment, Rachel understood that her presence transcended the physical. She was an artist still, crafting emotions into existence, even in death. With each brushstroke imagined in her mind, she poured out her love, her pain, and the essence of who she was. She hoped that somehow, her painting would speak for her, conveying the depth of their shared history and the yearning for understanding that lingered in the air. As Rachel's painting was revealed, gasps echoed in the hushed room. The artwork was a striking blend of vibrant colors and somber shadows, capturing the essence of her tumultuous emotions. Each brushstroke seemed to pulse with life, reflecting her joys and heartaches. The attendees, initially somber, were drawn in, their eyes widening as they recognized the depth of feeling embedded in the canvas. Ethan stood at the forefront, his breath caught in his throat. He stepped closer, his heart racing as he took in the intricate details. "Rachel," he whispered, his voice trembling. "I can feel you here." Laura, standing beside him, watched intently, a mixture of admiration and sadness washing over her. "It's beautiful," she murmured, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. She truly captured the essence of her spirit. Ethan turned to Laura, his expression a blend of confusion and yearning. "I never knew she could express herself like this," he said, his voice breaking. "It's as if she's speaking to me through this painting." In that moment of vulnerability, Ethan's emotions spilled forth. "I love you, Rachel," he declared, the words heavy with regret and longing. "I've made so many mistakes. I should have been there for you more. I should have told you how much you meant to me before it was too late." Laura's heart ached as she listened, knowing the weight of his confession. She took a step back, allowing Ethan space to grapple with his feelings while she processed her own. "Ethan," she said softly, "she knows. I believe she can feel this." Rachel, watching from her ethereal plane, felt a surge of hope wash over her. She had always loved Ethan deeply, and hearing his confession ignited a flicker of warmth within her spirit. She reached out, longing to touch him, to reassure him that it wasn't too late. As the room filled with muffled sobs, Rachel realized that her love for Ethan hadn't vanished. It shimmered like the colors on her canvas, vibrant and alive. Perhaps there was a way for her to influence his path forward, to guide him toward healing and understanding, even in her absence. Laura glanced at Ethan, sensing the profound shift in their dynamic. "You need to find a way to honor her," she said, her voice steady despite her own turmoil. "She wouldn't want you to be lost in grief." Ethan nodded, his mind racing with possibilities. "You're right," he replied, determination igniting in his eyes. "I need to live for her, to carry her spirit with me." Rachel smiled softly, knowing she had the power to inspire them both, even from beyond the veil. She felt a renewed sense of purpose, ready to guide their hearts toward a brighter tomorrow. As the funeral drew to a close, a heavy silence hung over the gathering. Rachel's spirit floated closer to Ethan, who was still reeling from the emotional impact of her painting. His eyes darted around the room, a mixture of confusion and longing etched across his face, as if he could sense her presence. "Rachel, where are you?" he whispered, the tremor in his voice echoing the depth of his sorrow. For a fleeting moment, Rachel felt warmth emanating from him, a connection that transcended the void that death had created. She wished she could wrap her arms around him, tell him she was still there, still fighting for him. But her ethereal form could only observe, powerless to bridge the chasm between their worlds. Across the room, Laura stood quietly, her expression conflicted. As the last of the mourners filed out, she approached Ethan, her heart heavy with unspoken words. "Ethan, I know this is hard," she said softly, placing a hand on his shoulder. "But Rachel loved you deeply. You have to find a way to honor her memory." Ethan looked at her, pain flickering in his eyes. "I don't know how to move on without her," he confessed, anguish spilling from him like a tidal wave. "The guilt is suffocating." Laura drew in a breath, her own feelings stirring within her. "You need to forgive yourself," she urged, her voice steady. "Rachel wouldn't want you to be trapped in this grief. She would want you to live fully, to find joy again." Rachel, listening intently, felt a pang of gratitude for Laura's kindness. She knew that their past was complicated, filled with layers of friendship and unspoken emotions. Yet, in this moment, Laura seemed to embrace the pain of loss alongside Ethan, choosing to support him instead of letting jealousy take root. Rachel always believed in the beauty of life, Laura continued, her tone earnest. We owe it to her to keep that spirit alive. As Rachel absorbed Laura's words, a sense of acceptance washed over her. She realized that love, true love, transcends boundaries, even the boundary of life and death. In this bittersweet moment, she embraced the truth that healing was possible for the living. Ethan and Laura shared a quiet understanding, a promise to honor Rachel's legacy by living authentically, embracing the beauty in their shared memories. Rachel felt a profound peace settle within her spirit. She would always be a part of their story, guiding them as they navigated their futures, forever intertwined by love and loss.